Welcome to the third and final lesson in the Egyptian unit. Today we're going to be talking about the New Kingdom. And you have your notes in front of you, so let's begin. In this particular time period, from 1570 down to 1070 BC, we are going to meet some of the most powerful rulers of Egypt that the world has ever known. So, our first one on your list, his name was Ahmose the Great. Now, you already know a little bit about Ahmose the Great from a previous lesson. So let's do a little bit of the mental warm-ups. Who was Ahmose the Great? But yet better, what did he create? He created a new title for himself and all further rulers of Egypt after him. What was that title? You got it. It's the word Pharaoh. So in 1570, when Ahmose the Great takes power, he creates a brand new title for himself, Pharaoh, and from now on, all of the rulers of Egypt will be called pharaohs. Okay? Now, let's move on. Thutmose I, he's next on your list, and Thutmose I is famous worldwide for basically two things. For instance, if we would go to any university in the world today, and when they are talking about Thutmose I, they're going to talk about these two things. Number one, Thutmose I was famous for what is called the killing of the innocents. The killing of the innocents. Now, what is that? Let me explain. You can go to many sources, but you can go to your Old Testament Bible and go to the book of Exodus, chapter 1. And in chapter 1, we're told that there was a Pharaoh at that time who made a law where all little Jewish boys, 1 year old and under, were to be killed. That was a law. And that is one of the things that he's famous for. He had his soldiers slaughter these little Jewish boys. That may sound familiar to you, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit about that. So that's number one. That's the first thing that Thutmose I is famous for. The second thing he's famous for is that he had a very famous daughter, and her name was Hatshepsut. I want to show you a picture now of Hatshepsut. This picture here is taken from a movie called The Ten Commandments. It's not the remake, but it's the movie back in the 1950s. This person here is Anne Baxter. And in the movie, The Ten Commandments, they've got the wrong Pharaoh, her name is wrong, but we're going to put the right name to the right person. So in our presentation today, this is Hatshepsut. This is the famous daughter of Thutmose I. I want you to take a look at this. Look at her hair, look at her makeup, how she is dressed. She is very feminine, because when we come to talk about her a little bit later on, we're going to talk about her as dressing as a man when she went out into the public or talking to dignitaries, other kings. This woman right here was the most powerful woman who has ever lived on this planet. She had absolute power. For example, our president of the United States, all the presidents, they are the most powerful men on planet Earth, but they do not have absolute power. This woman right here will become a pharaoh, and she will have absolute power. So Hatshepsut, we're going to come back to her. What we need to do now, we need to talk about the concept of the daughter of Pharaoh. This is a title, the daughter of Pharaoh. Let me give you an illustration or an example. One of the most powerful and famous pharaohs of Egypt, his name was Ramesses II, or Ramesses the Great. Ramesses died when he was 90, and he was in power for many decades. And throughout his time as pharaoh, he had many wives, he had many concubines, and he had many children, many sons, many daughters. Some would say he had almost 60 daughters. That's the ones they were counting. Now, which of the 60 daughters was the daughter of Pharaoh? Or are all of them called the daughter of Pharaoh? The answer is this. Now, you have to catch this, because if you don't understand this concept, you will not understand anything about ancient Egypt. Okay? You have your Pharaoh and his queen. The queen is wife number one. Okay? He has wife number 2, wife number 3. He can have wife number 4. He can have as many wives as he wants, as he chooses, and he can have as many concubines as he wants. The concubines are, those are the girls that he uses for his own pleasure. So wife number one, that's his queen, and here's our Pharaoh. The first girl that is born to our Pharaoh and to the queen, wife number one, not number two, but wife number one, that girl and that girl alone is the daughter of Pharaoh. Does that make any sense? I hope so, because that is, we must understand that, or we're not going to understand anything about what I'm going to tell you about today. So Pharaoh, his queen, wife number one, the very first girl is the daughter of Pharaoh. It is a title. It is a title. Now, there's another title for this girl. Another good test question for you. Another title for her is the throne princess. The throne princess. I'll explain that a little bit later. So you have the daughter of Pharaoh and you have the throne princess. You would never call her by her name. That would be an affront to her. You would never call the Pharaoh by his name. You would say Pharaoh, or you would say the daughter of Pharaoh, or the throne princess. This is how you address royalty back in ancient Egypt. All right. Now, we need to understand the concept of succession. Who is going to be the next Pharaoh when father dies? Who becomes the next Pharaoh? Okay, now stay with me. You have our Pharaoh, and we have our queen again. Wife number one, not wife number two. The very first boy that is born to the Pharaoh and to wife number one, the queen, that boy is going to take the throne of Egypt when father dies. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so, but in order for that boy to be the Pharaoh, he must marry the daughter of Pharaoh. You got it right. Brother is going to marry sister. Remember, the daughter of Pharaoh is, here's our Pharaoh, here is the wife number one, the queen. The first girl between them is the daughter of Pharaoh, or the throne princess. The very first boy between them, he will be Pharaoh. That boy must marry his sister, the daughter of Pharaoh, in order to become Pharaoh. And here's why. The Egyptians believed that that girl, the daughter of Pharaoh, only her, was a goddess. She was divine. And they believed that she was the daughter of Ra. Remember Ra we talked about? Ra is the sun god. And they believed that the daughter of Pharaoh had Ra blood in her, flowing through her veins. So she's a little goddess. And in order for the boy to become a Pharaoh, he must marry her and mate with her, and he can too become a god in this time period of the new kingdom. All right, do we have that all set? Daughter of Pharaoh. And remember, she's also called the throne princess because her brother, which is the firstborn between Pharaoh and the queen, must marry her in order to get the throne of Egypt. That's why they call her the throne princess. He must marry her to get the throne of Egypt. All right, those are basics. Those are basics, and now let's move on. That's Thutmose the First, known for two things. Now we move on to Thutmose the Second. Write in your notes. Thutmose the Second, it was the firstborn son of Thutmose the First and his queen. We've already talked about that. That makes sense. But Thutmose the Second becomes Pharaoh when Thutmose the First dies. He has to marry someone. So when Thutmose the First died, the Pharaoh, firstborn son, Thutmose the Second, becomes Pharaoh, but he must marry somebody in order to get the throne of Egypt. Now, who does he have to marry? You've got it. He must marry the daughter of Pharaoh, who happens to be his sister by the name of Hatshepsut. So, Thutmose II and Hatshepsut, they marry. So Thutmose II is now Pharaoh, and Hatshepsut, daughter of Pharaoh, is now queen of Egypt. During their time when they were married, they had 7 daughters. Now let me say a little bit about marriage in the ancient world. It's much different than it is today. In the ancient world, and I don't care if it's in Egypt, I don't care if it's Rome or Greece or China or whatever civilization in the ancient world, it's the same. girls become women at puberty. So that is at the age of 9, 10, or 11. Later on, we'll have the first Roman emperor, Caesar Augustus. He'll make a worldwide law saying you cannot get engaged to a girl under the age of 10. Once she reaches 10, puberty, now you can get engaged to her. So when a girl reaches puberty, she is physically a woman. But back then, she was mentally and emotionally, and you can even say spiritually, a woman. By the time a girl is 5 years old in any culture, she can cook, sew, clean, take care of a household. So in another 5 years, at the age of 10, she's ready to get married. And physically, she is capable. So what would happen was, at puberty, when that time comes for a girl, she becomes a woman, and she will become engaged to a man, and they will have a one-year betrothal. It's called a one-year engagement or a betrothal. We use both words today. And during that one-year engagement period, they are legally married, but there is no consummation. There's no sex. After the one-year betrothal, then the marriage is consummated. And then, of course, usually 9 months later, you have your first child. That is the way it was done in the ancient world. Now, let me tell you about the men. When did boys become men in the ancient world, whether it's from the Chinese civilization, the Sumerian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. Boys become men at the age of 30, no exceptions. So if you're 29, you're a boy. We have many writings where it talks about this, this boy at 29. You say, wait a minute, he's 29 and he's a boy? That's exactly right. When he becomes 30, he now becomes a man, and now he can look for a wife. And so you would have 30-year-olds and usually much older men, and they would marry the 10-year-olds or the 11-year-olds whenever the year that the little girl became a woman. That is the way it was. That is not our way in our time right now, but that is the way it was in the ancient world. So we're talking about Hatshepsut. She is a woman at this time when she marries, and she will have 7 daughters. And in the ancient world, they did not space their children like people space their children today. You have one child, maybe wait 2 years or 3 years, and you have the next. Nobody did that in the ancient world. You have a child, and then we're going to get another one in 9 months. So it's a repeating cycle. So Hatshepsut and her brother husband, Thutmose II, have only daughters. Now, you know that's a problem. What is the problem with only daughters? You need a son, don't you? So Thutmose II must have a son, the firstborn son with Hatshepsut, and then that boy would become the next pharaoh. But they're only daughters. So this becomes a very big problem for the pharaoh and, of course, Hatshepsut, who is the queen. Now, let's talk a little bit about the daughter of Pharaoh again. We know her name. Her name was Hatshepsut, the one we're going to talk about. Now, you can also go to the literature again. You can go to your Old Testament in the book of Exodus, chapter 2. And in that chapter, we find a person called the daughter of Pharaoh. Now, we know that Moses wrote the book of Exodus, and Moses does not name her, because if he had named her, that would have been an error, because you don't name the daughter of Pharaoh. You call her the daughter of Pharaoh or the throne princess. It's just like in chapter 1 of Exodus. You don't name Thutmose I. You just say, the Pharaoh did this. That is the way it's done in the ancient world. So Moses got it right. But in chapter 2 of Exodus, we are introduced to the daughter of Pharaoh. We know who she is, who she was. Her name is Hatshepsut. We can put the history together, and that is who that woman was at that time. And what we're told this, that she's down in the palace area, down by the Nile, and she's bathing, and she's, relaxing. And we're told that a little box with a little baby boy, by the way, the Hebrew word is ark. A little ark came floating down the Nile River down to where the daughter of Pharaoh was and bathing and relaxing. So it's the same word for Noah's ark, and the word ark means box. So this little box came floating straight down the Nile, right on the bank. And it came down to where the daughter of Pharaoh was, where she was bathing and relaxing and having pleasure, out in the sun and so forth. She finds a little baby boy in it, and she'll take that little boy out and name him and raise him as a prince of Egypt. Now, I don't know about you, I have two big problems with what I just taught you and what the book of Exodus tells you. Let's take care of the first problem. We're told that a little box came floating down the Nile on the side of the bank of the Nile. Now, I've been to Egypt. The Nile current is treacherous, and back then, there were crocodile and hippopotami, no hippopotami today, at least I hope not, but no hippopotami, and very dangerous current. And I'm thinking, how did that little box with that little baby in there go straight down the bank and down to where the palace was, where the daughter of Pharaoh was at? That current is so fast, it should have just taken it out and probably drowned. The baby would have drowned, or the crocodile, the hippopotami would have killed it or eaten it. But that's what the text says. I've got a problem with that. When I was in Egypt, I tested this. I wanted to see this. And you can do it one of two ways. I won't tell you which way I did it, but you can do one of two ways. You can take an object, okay, and put it on the current. You can stand on the bank and you can put it right there and see if it goes straight down the Nile, all right, on the bank. Or you can get in the water yourself, get into the Nile River, and lay down and do a backflow and see if you go straight down the Nile or if you go out in the treacherous current. Either way, either way, that object or you will go straight down the bank. It does not go out into the dangerous current. And I'm thinking, look at this. It is exactly as Exodus tells us. So I wanted to find out what's going on in the Nile River. So what I did was I found an engineer, an expert in hydrology. Hydrology is the study of water. And this engineer told me that the Nile River has 3 currents. Good test question. 3 currents. There is a current on this side of the bank. There is the big, fast, dangerous current. And then on the other side of the Nile River, on that bank, there's another current. So he said, yes, you can put anything, yourself or an object, and it will go float straight down on the bank. Exactly as the book of Exodus tells us. 3 currents, they understood that back then. I did not understand it, so I had to learn from an expert how the Nile River functions, but it worked. So that problem's taken care of. But I've got a bigger problem. I have a bigger problem. What law did Hatshepsut, daughter of Pharaoh, what law did her father make? Remember Thutmose the First? He made a law that all little Jewish boys 1 year old and under must die. You must throw them into the Nile River and drown them. She finds a little boy. Does Hatshepsut know that that little boy is Jewish? You better believe she knows it. Egyptian boys are not circumcised. Hebrew boys are. Plus, when she would have opened that little box up, the baby would not have had fine raiment on, like a royal baby. It would have had homespun, poor cloth. So when she opens it up, she knows that some mother put that little Jewish boy, baby, on the Nile to save that baby somehow from the wrath of her father's law. She knows that. By the way, she does not love the Jewish people. The Jewish people had been in bondage for a little over 400 years. Remember when we talked about the pyramid building? During the pyramid building, there are no slaves in Egypt. But now, in this time period, in the New Kingdom, the Israelites are the slaves of the Egyptians. In other words, they build the cities for the pharaohs. She knows what her father says. She has no love for these slaves. They're animals, they're property, they're her father's, now they're her husband's property. Why did she take that little baby out from the Nile, out of that box, name that baby, take him back and rule and teach him, and he will become a prince of Egypt? That makes absolutely no sense. But it does if you understand one thing. Now, let's take a look at what Exodus is telling us again. We're told that the daughter of Pharaoh is bathing and relaxing down in her palace area. The little box comes straight down the Nile. We know that is a current on this side. It comes straight down the Nile. She finds it, she opens it up, and there is a little Jewish boy in there. But in her mind, she's not thinking that. Now, review a little bit. Does she have a son with her husband brother? She only has daughters, doesn't she? She only has daughters. Therefore, in her mind and any Egyptian's mind, who brought that little boy to her to be her son? The Nile River. And the Nile River was a god. To the Egyptian people, the Nile River was a god. His name was Hapi, H-A-P-Y, capital H. You have that in your notes. So in her mind, she has no daughters, and this is a problem. So the Nile River god, Hapi, brought that little baby down to her. She knows it's a Jewish boy, but it doesn't matter. Would she offend the Nile god? Not at all, because if she offends the Nile god, he may not flood, and so that they can plant their crops and have a harvest. They may have famine. And of course, then they blame her husband. They blame the Pharaoh for that. We've learned that in our first lesson. She's not going to offend, and plus she's a goddess too. She's a goddess too. So in her mind now, in the Egyptian's mind, it's Hapi who brought that little box, that little boy to her. She will take that baby out. She will name that little boy Moses. This is how Moses appears on the stage of history. It is through the doings of the most powerful woman, who will become later, Hatshepsut. She will take that little baby out and name him Moses. By the way, the word Moses means to draw out. And she said, because I drew you out of the Nile, I will call you Moses. But there's much more to it. Look on your paper, your information that I've given you. Look at Thutmose the First, or just Thutmose. If you put a line after the T-H-U-T, Thut, and then Moses, and then put Moses' name down there, who did she name her little boy after? You got it right. She named it after her father, Thutmose the First. So if I say Moses in English, it's Moses. If I say Moses in Hebrew, it's Moshe. If I say Moses in the Egyptian language, it's Moses. Thut, Moses. So Moses, Moshe, Moses. She named that little boy Moses after her powerful father, the Pharaoh, Thutmose the First. All right, I want to show you. We're going to take you to another slide here. We've talked about some things. Here is a slide of Hatshepsut finding that little Jewish boy. There's our basket. It looks like a little basket here, but the word is ark, so little ark. The cloth would have been homespun. She could have told very quickly that this is a little Jewish boy and not an Egyptian boy. So she finds him. And by the way, this movie made so many mistakes, but the costuming is magnificent. And this is very good, the reeds. It's just like that today. These reeds are on this side of the bank. You can see way over here, there's reeds over on that side. So here's a current, and then the big dangerous current, and then the current way over here. So 3 currents, and of course, this is the famous Hatshepsut finding the little boy, and she will call him and name him Moses. All right. So now we've set the stage now for Moses and what's to come. Not very long after she brings Moses into her home and raises him as a prince of Egypt, her husband brother dies. Thutmose II died. He was always sick and just not in good health, so he dies. At this time, Hatshepsut, queen of Egypt, is 18 years old. 18 years old. Now, there is a vacancy for the throne of Egypt. Now, you tell me, who is going to become the next pharaoh? Well, it's the next boy, isn't it? So, and it would be the next son of Thutmose I. And so, because Thutmose II has no son, remember that? He had no son. Hatshepsut's got a son, but it's like the Nile River is the father of this little baby in her mind. So it must go to the next boy of Thutmose I. And that individual was Thutmose III. So you got the first, the second, and the third. Makes sense. Thutmose III will become the next pharaoh. Now, he must do something in order to become pharaoh. He must marry the daughter of Pharaoh. And who is the daughter of Pharaoh? It's his sister, older sister, Hatshepsut at 18. And, oh, just by the way, Thutmose III was 5 years old. He's 5 years old. He's going to be the pharaoh, but he has to marry the daughter of Pharaoh, which is Hatshepsut. She's 18 at this time. Now, don't get worried about anything. There was no consummation at all, not with a 5-year-old boy. That would come later, but not at a 5-year-old boy. But here's another thing that's interesting and very perceptive of Hatshepsut. Here's a 5-year-old boy. He's going to be pharaoh. And here is the queen. They get married. No, there's nothing going on. And she's queen, but in her mind, can a 5-year-old boy run the most powerful empire on the planet? Can a 5-year-old boy make decisions for the greatest civilization at this time? Absolutely not. And therefore, Hatshepsut took power. She becomes a pharaoh. She has strong backers. A lot of the priests that worked for her father, Thutmose I, are backing her. So this is unheard of in the ancient world. It is unheard of. In the ancient world, and I don't care what culture, Greece, Rome, China, Sumeria, it doesn't matter, Egypt, women are considered as defective men. That is how they consider them. Now, please don't say Dr. Donnelly believes women are defective men. I don't. I believe women are superior, and I can prove that, but that's another class. They believed that women were defective men. Therefore, they can't think, they can't do anything, their bodies are defective, cover them up, don't look at them. Just keep them at home, keep your mouth shut, and don't be seen. That's the way the world saw them in the ancient world. So here is a woman, an 18-year-old woman, who takes power, takes the throne of Egypt, the most powerful civilization on the planet at this time. She is remarkable, and she becomes a female pharaoh. Now, let's take a look at another slide or two here. Here is a statue of the real Hatshepsut. Now, we're going to take a look at another one here, but her facial features, her name means beautiful one. It means beautiful, and she was a beautiful woman. These facial features are just stunning. Now, I'm going to take you to another one of her. This is a little bit of a close-up. Look at this one. Look at those big eyes, small lips. Small lips. I mean, the nose is very feminine, but these big eyes, and there's just incredible beauty here. And by the way, if you take a measurement from that part of the eye down to that part of the lips, it's the same distance from here up to here. Her face is geometrically perfect. It is amazing, absolutely amazing. This is what she looked like. Now, when they made the movie, The Ten Commandments, one of the things that they did, which I didn't know, and I applaud them, they wanted a woman to look like her, an actress. You have to have a beautiful actress to look like her. And that was Anne Baxter. Let me show you again. Here she is. Now look here. When they took her measurements of her eye, like I did with the statue of Hatshepsut, from here down here, it's the same measurement from here to here. Her face is geometrically perfect. And look at this, small lips, very feminine nose, and those big eyes. This may be what she looked like, because we can superimpose her face right on the statue of Hatshepsut and it fits. So this is no doubt a very good likeness. And as I said, the movies, Hollywood always makes mistakes, but this was a masterpiece of trying to find someone who could fit that face. And Anne Baxter, a beautiful woman, this is her right here. So we may be looking at reasonable likeness of the most powerful woman who has ever lived on this planet. All right, Pharaoh Hatshepsut, unheard of in the ancient world, a female with absolute power, unbelievable. Now, I've already taught you, she is in a man's world. How is she, a woman, 18, when she takes power? How is she going to deal with other kings and other places that, pay dues, or not dues, but taxes and so forth to Egypt? Egypt is a superpower. How is she going to go out to her public, to her people? There are men there. They don't respect women. And especially, ambassadors and kings from other places, they don't respect women. Hatshepsut is brilliant. Here's what she did. First, she would not wear her feminine clothes, Now, remember the pictures that I showed you of Anne Baxter as Hatshepsut? Very feminine looking. But when she went out to her public, to her people to make speeches or whatever, festivals or whatever, she never looked like a female. When she entertained ambassadors from other countries or dealt with a king from another country, she never looked like a female. What she did was she wore a man's royal clothing, like her father's or her husband's. In other words, she did that to hide her curves, to hide her femininity. So you could not see that she is a female. So she wants to look straight. And so the bigger clothing, like her father or her husband would wear as a pharaoh, she wore those. And so you can't really see her, her femininity, her curves, and therefore it kind of distracts you from saying, okay, she's a woman and women can't do anything, they're defective men. It pulls you away from that. That's the first thing she did. The second thing she did is the pharaohs and the kings of Egypt, what they would do is they wore a false beard. Now, the men, all Egyptian men are clean shaven. Nobody has a beard in Egypt. But the pharaohs, they would have a false beard, and what it did was it just came down and it tied behind their head. And when she went out to her public, to her people, or when she met a king or an ambassador, she is wearing that false beard. So she's dressing like a pharaoh, but a man. She's wearing the false beard, and she did one more thing. She wore no cosmetics, no mascara, no lipstick, as I showed you with, let's go back, I want to take you back to the picture of Hatshepsut and Anne Baxter. So, what she did, she's not going to have any of this here, none of that around there, no lipstick, no rouge. And they had all the cosmetics back there. The Egyptian women were known for cosmetics and beautiful women. And so she wore none of this. She would wear nothing like that. She would have none of the female dresses or anything like that. She wore a man's clothing like a king would or a pharaoh would, and she wore the false beard, and she wore no makeup. Now this is going to be a problem, the makeup part, because she is so beautiful. Even without makeup, she's stunning. I mean, she's gorgeous. But it worked. It worked. So when she entertained another king from another country or ambassadors, she would always appear looking as best she could as a man. The face, you can't help that, and it worked. She had the power and she used it. Those are the three things, three good test questions about that, about her. Hatshepsut also, as pharaoh, was a great administrator, a very good administrator. Now remember, people in the ancient world would tell you that women are defective men, therefore their minds are defective, their thinking are defective. They can't read, they can't write, they can't do anything. They can't make any kind of decisions. Hatshepsut proved everybody wrong. She was a fantastic administrator. She made Egypt even more powerful than where her brother was pretty good, but her father really made it powerful. She went beyond that. It was amazing what she did. I want to show you now a temple. This is Hatshepsut's temple, and there it is. Take a look at this. This is huge. It's built right into the side of this mountain. You can walk up this causeway and go down in there. You can go up here, and you can go on inside. This is magnificent. This is Hatshepsut's temple. Now, I do want to show you something. Right there. See right there? When I was in Egypt, I was standing right there, and that's where I almost died. Almost died right there. What happened was, when you are in Egypt, you're told before you even go, you must drink a lot of water. So I knew that because you dehydrate in that humidity. It's just awful. So I had a bag that I had over my arm and had like 3 or 5 big liter water containers, and I would drink throughout the whole day. But this day, I had forgotten to do a lot of drinking the water. And let me show you one more time. Let's go right back here. Right there. When I was standing right there, I can't remember if I was talking to somebody, but all of a sudden, I started to feel very weak. And I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And I'm thinking, what is happening? And then it came to me, I'm dying. I am dying. And so I took my water out, drank some more, and was hydrated. So The moral of the lesson is when you go to Egypt, make sure you drink water when you don't even want to, because you can literally die from that. Hatshepsut's temple, a masterpiece. Now, she's supposed to be in there, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but we did not find her there. We'll bring that up a little bit later on. All right. Now, so a great administrator. But as the years pass, what happens to 5-year-old little boys? Thutmose III. They grow up, don't they? They grow up. So here's Thutmose III growing up to manhood, and many scholars a few years ago thought that when he became a man, he hated Hatshepsut so much for taking his throne when he was 5 that he murdered her, killed her. That is absolutely not true, and we're going to talk about, we have the evidence for you. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But let me talk about, just for a moment, Thutmose III, an amazing individual. So here's this 5-year-old little boy. He's growing up. You have the queen, who is the pharaoh. That's Hatshepsut. He became so good as a fighter, as a warrior, and in battle strategy and formations and so forth. Hatshepsut, Pharaoh Hatshepsut, put her husband brother in charge of her army. Now, you and I know, and Hatshepsut knew at that time too, that the real power of a civilization, of an empire, is the military. And she puts him in charge as the commanding general of the forces of Egypt. Now, if she was afraid of him, that he would kill her someday, why would she have put him in power over the army? Because he could have taken power any time he wanted to, and he didn't do it. So she is not afraid of that, and Thutmose III is not going to kill her. Go back to Thutmose III. He was so good that Thutmose III never lost a battle. He never was beaten in any battle that he did for Egypt, himself, and of course Hatshepsut. He conquered a lot of territory for Hatshepsut, and no man beat him in battle. Now, there are only 2 individuals of all human history that have never lost a battle. First is Thutmose III. The second, his name was Alexander the Great. See, not even the great Julius Caesar won all his battles. He'll win the wars, he'll conquer the world, but he will lose some battles. So back to Thutmose III. And by the way, Alexander the Great, who lived, many years, 1,200 years after Thutmose III, when Alexander the Great was growing up, he had a hero. His hero was Thutmose III. He wanted to be just like him, and he did. He never lost a battle. This man, Thutmose III, is such a fierce warrior that scholars today call him the greatest Egyptian warrior of all time. The greatest Egyptian warrior of all time. We see him in the reliefs, in other words, the pictures on the walls. He is standing in a chariot in the front line getting ready to fight. He's the commanding general. He's not way back on some hill watching the battle. He's in the front row. And he's got his bow and arrow, which he was the best bowman in the world. He has his bow and arrow stretched out, ready to kill. This man is fierce. The greatest, good test question, the greatest Egyptian warrior of all time. And because of that, and because he was so brilliant, scholars today call Thutmose III the Napoleon of ancient Egypt. It's in your notes. The Napoleon of ancient Egypt. Now, you and I know who Napoleon was back in, a couple, or 100 and some years ago. Tried to conquer the world, and of course he was stopped. He was from France. But Thutmose III, the Napoleon of the ancient world, never lost a battle. So he grows up, he becomes the greatest military commander of all Egyptian history, and Hatshepsut, a brilliant administrator, a brilliant pharaoh. Now, as time moves on, the history tells us that Hatshepsut disappears. She just vanishes from the pages of history. She's gone. And scholars speculated, incorrectly, but they said, well, it was Thutmose III. She took his throne as a little 5-year-old boy, and now he's old enough, he's got the army, kill her, get rid of her, and take the throne. We know that's not true. And we'll give you that a little bit later on. Now, the throne is vacant. There is no Hatshepsut. She's gone. Who is going to take over? How many rivals do we have now? How many claimants to the throne of Egypt? We have two, don't we? We have Thutmose III. He can be the next pharaoh, but there's another rival. Who is that other rival or the other claimant to the throne of Egypt? Exactly, you've got it right. Moses. Wait a minute, how can Moses be a claimant to the throne? Remember, Pharaoh, firstborn son from his queen or wife. Well, who is the Pharaoh? It's unusual, it's unique, but it's Hatshepsut, isn't it? So her firstborn son can't be from, a wife, so it is from Ra. Remember the Nile god, Hape. Hape is the one who gave her that little boy. So that is her firstborn son. And so the firstborn son has a legal right and claim to the throne. But we've got a big problem. We've got the powerful, the greatest warrior of all time, Thutmose III, and we have Prince Moses. These two rivals now, which one will become the next pharaoh? I can tell you from the sources, from the literature, that it looks like Hatshepsut wanted Moses because that's her son. That's how it's always done. It's the Pharaoh's firstborn son, where her firstborn son is Moses from Hape, the Nile River. But you have another individual, that's Thutmose III. He controls the army, and as I said, that is the real power behind any throne of any civilization whatsoever. Let me show you. This right here, I want to show you, I want to bring this up right now. This is called the Valley of the Kings, and Hatshepsut created this. Let's just talk about this before we go on. You see tourists here. If you go back this way, back where they're coming from, there is a big building. You can get refreshments, food, souvenirs, and then you go down here. There's the valley, and this is where pharaohs are buried. Do you remember when we talked about mummification and burial in the sand, burial to mastabas, and then the pyramids? Well, the pyramids were robbed, so what they did was they went down 300 miles down south of the pyramids of Giza, and Hatshepsut built this. She is the one credited for this. All the pharaohs are buried down under the earth. In other words, they made cities under the earth and buried them there. Now, this is where they found Pharaoh Tut, not King Tut, Pharaoh Tut. He's down in here. I've been down here, but look up here. Look at this. What does that look like? Looks like a pyramid, doesn't it? What the Egyptians did was they went up and carved out like a pyramid shape, and that pyramid represents all the pharaohs down here who are buried. So that's right on top of all the pharaohs. Excuse me, the pyramid shape has a very religious connotation. So this is a very important thing that Hatshepsut did. And here we have, as we just talked, one of the rivals or one of the claimants to the throne, Thutmose III. This comes from the movie Ten Commandments, so we're going to pretend a little bit. But this is magnificent. This is the war crown. This is a war crown. This is exactly, the colors are beautiful. We can see on the reliefs on the tombs and so forth of the colors. So what they did was they just copied all the colors and everything. So it's spectacular. This is a Thutmose III, and this is just amazing costuming and design of this. Okay, let's go on. And again, the most powerful woman who ever lived, she's gone. There she is. Now, here she is, where she is not going out to see any kind of king or her public. She's inside. She looks very feminine, and this is how she would have looked without, entertaining somebody else, some dignitary or ambassador, king, a prince, whatever. So this is her right here. Now, here we have Moses from this movie. Here's Moses here, and he is one of the claimants to the throne. And this is a nice picture of him, very good costuming of what he would have worn as a prince. The next one is very, very good. Now, here is our Thutmose III, and here is Prince Moses. Now, look right here. What is this right here coming from Thutmose III's head? It's a lock of hair, isn't it? This is called the prince's lock, the lock of a prince. In other words, The man who has this lock on the side of his head is going to be the next Pharaoh. But look down here. Moses has one too. You can't see it because he has more of a helmet on here. Moses has that prince's lock too. So there are the rivals. They got that right. They got the wrong person's name here, but Moses they got right. But look at this. This is how they would have, this is just magnificent. And so here are the two. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be Thutmose III, the greatest warrior of all time, or is it going to be Prince Moses? Both are smart, they're intelligent, they're warriors. Who's it going to be? Well, the answer came very quickly. What we're told from the text, from your literature in the Old Testament, is that Moses killed an Egyptian. Prince Moses killed an Egyptian. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going back to a previous lesson. What was one of the most sacred laws of the Egyptian people? You know exactly what it was. One of the most sacred laws that we learned was that an Egyptian does not hurt or kill another Egyptian. We kill our enemies, but we do not hurt or kill each other. What did Prince Moses do? He killed an Egyptian. What the text tells us, the literature says this. He's a prince. Remember, the Jewish people are in bondage to the Egyptians. They are slaves. They build the cities. We're told that an Egyptian taskmaster, somebody who was in charge of the slaves, was beating a slave. For whatever reason, the text does not tell us. Prince Moses goes over there. It evidently was quite severe and maybe tries to stop it. We don't know. Accidentally killed him? We don't know. The point is, he killed him. And we're told that Prince Moses took the body of the Egyptian and buried it in the sand. Now, why is he burying an Egyptian? He's a prince. Why is he burying that Egyptian in the sand? The answer is because he broke the law. Only a king is exempt. A prince is not. You cannot hurt or you cannot kill another Egyptian. If you do, death penalty for you. Prince Moses has broken a very sacred law. Now, who is going to be the next Pharaoh? Thutmose III or Prince Moses? Thutmose III. He can now legally put Moses to death. They find the Egyptian's body in the sand. And now, what does Moses do? He leaves. He gets out of Egypt. Why? Because he can be put to death. He's broken a sacred law. Thutmose III has got him. It is the throne of Egypt is now his. Moses leaves. He goes out into the wilderness at the age of 40 years of age. He is 40 years old, a prince of Egypt, could have been Pharaoh, the most powerful man on the planet. Kills an Egyptian, breaks the sacred law. He knows what the laws are. And then he buries the body, and it's found, and he gets out. So now we have Thutmose III. He is now the new Pharaoh of Egypt. Moses goes out into the wilderness, and he tends sheep and goats. He becomes a shepherd. Now let's pause here for a moment. To the Egyptian people, no exceptions, to the Egyptian people, a shepherd was the lowest of the low. That is the worst kind of person on planet Earth. A shepherd tending goats and sheep. Not good. So a lowest of the low. Now, I want to show you something here. We're going to show you another slide. There he is. Prince Moses, Prince of Egypt, could have been Pharaoh, goes out into the wilderness for the next 40 years of his life and becomes a shepherd, tender of sheep. There's his shepherd staff. Now, I want to ask you a question because it's very important. How far did Moses fall? How far did he fall? Big fall, wasn't it? He fell all the way. Prince of Egypt. Probably Pharaoh of Egypt. At least a prince. He goes down to the bottom, to the very bottom, to a shepherd. Now, think about how Moses is thinking. He's raised as a prince of Egypt. He knows how people think about shepherds. He has power, and now he has nothing. He is the lowest of the low. So, as far as in the eyes of the Egyptian people. So now he spends the next 40 years in the wilderness. Thutmose III is now Pharaoh of Egypt, and he did a great job. I mean, he was a powerful Pharaoh, and so we must give him credit for that. I'm going to show you another slide here. There he is. There is the statue of the real Thutmose III. Interesting, little smile there. I'm not sure he would have smiled, especially when his rival Moses almost took his throne. But this is just a fantastic piece of work, of sculpture. The face is just magnificent, powerful face, just interesting. So that is him. That is our new Pharaoh right there. Now, the next section in your notes is called the Exodus. The Exodus. So you're following along? We're right there. We're right on schedule. The word Exodus means the departure, the leaving. In other words, you depart, you leave from one place and go somewhere else. So the Exodus means the leaving. And in this case, it will be those Jewish people leaving Egypt as slaves and leaving and going to freedom. Now, we have to try to get a number here. How many slaves did the Egyptians have? In other words, how many Israelites or Jewish people were slaves in bondage at this time? We know minimum close to 1 million. I mean, we know that. But that's mainly men. You have women and children. So many would say up to 3 million. So what scholars do, they go into the middle. They say, let's say roughly 2 million slaves. That's the object. 2 million slaves are the workforce. They are the economy of the Egyptian empire, the most powerful civilization on planet Earth at this particular time. And at the age of 80 years old, Moses, the literature tells us that God spoke to him and told him to go back to Egypt to get his people out of there. In other words, bring the Israelites, 2 million Israelites, out of bondage into freedom. We are told also that Moses will go back. But first, who is reigning as Pharaoh? Thutmose III does a great job. But in 1450 BC, it's in your notes, 1450 BC, Thutmose III died. He is growing old, just like Moses too. So in 1450, we know the date, Thutmose III died. Now you have a vacuum. You need somebody to be Pharaoh. Therefore, who will become the next Pharaoh? Well, Thutmose III, his queen, is the firstborn son, isn't it? The firstborn son of Thutmose III, his name was Amenhotep II. It's in your notes. Amenhotep II takes power in 1450, 1449 BC, and then Moses returns about 1446. So just around 3 years or so after his rival, Thutmose III, is dead, a new Pharaoh is in power. Amenhotep II, the firstborn son of Thutmose III. So when Moses gets back, it's not Thutmose III on the throne, his rival, it's his son. It is a new Pharaoh. Now my question to you is this. Did Amenhotep II know who Moses was? When he came back, did he know who he was? The answer is, of course he did. The Egyptians are notorious for keeping records of victories, never defeats. I mean, I mentioned Ramesses the Great. Ramesses the Great it was really a loss, but it came out to a draw. But when he came back as a conquering hero. And he writes everything down, he builds buildings, says, I won the battle and I won the war. Well, he didn't do it. The Egyptians are notorious for spinning the truth. And for Thutmose III, he would have told his son, Amenhotep II, as he's growing up, all the great victories that he had. And the great victory over his rival brother, it would have been like a brother, Moses, to get the throne. Because Moses was the firstborn son of Hatshepsut, Pharaoh Hatshepsut, and Hape, the Nile god. He would have told Amenhotep II, his firstborn son, about the great victory that he had over Moses. Now think about this. Here comes Moses. He is now 80 years old. His rival's gone, Thutmose III, and now the son is in power, Amenhotep II. How does Moses come back? What does he come back as? A prince of Egypt? No, he comes back as a shepherd. Now, put yourself in Amenhotep II, Pharaoh of Egypt, in his shoes. He knows who Moses is, the rival, but he comes back as a shepherd. And of course, what does Moses say? Moses says the famous words, "Let my people go." Let the Israelites go. Let me show you a slide from the movie. Here we have the famous movie. We're going to pretend this is Amenhotep. There is the firstborn son of Amenhotep. We're going to come back. His name is Weben-Senu. There's the queen. And there's Moses. His brother Aaron was with him. Look at this. He's got the shepherd's staff. Is he dressed like a prince? Absolutely not. Look at the homespun, how poor this man is. But he comes back and says, his God says, "Let my people go." And of course, Amenhotep II says, "No, no. I will not let your people go." Now think about this now. He is, Amenhotep, the most powerful man on the planet, and a shepherd, a rival to my father, whom my father defeated years ago. A shepherd is telling me what to do, and this shepherd, Moses, has one God. I'm an Egyptian pharaoh. I have dozens of gods and goddesses. Can you see why he's not going to let these people go? They are his workforce. His economy will collapse if he lets those 2 million Israelites go. And plus, he's in no mood for a shepherd to tell him what to do, and he's really in no mood for the rival of his father to the throne of Egypt to tell him what to do. So you can see the conflict. It's amazing. It's just quite powerful. So Pharaoh says he refuses. So what happens, our text tells us that Moses and his God brings 10 plagues. We'll talk about the first 9 in a sense. He brings the plagues, bad things to happen to Egypt, and literally almost destroys Egypt. So let's just talk about the first plague, and we'll go down to the 10th plague. By the way, the plagues, this is interesting. When I was learning Egyptian history and religion, the plagues are not Moses versus Amenhotep II. That's not the battle here. The real confrontation is the God of Moses versus the gods and goddesses of Egypt. Who is the real God or gods? It is a confrontation of who the real God is or gods. That's what's going on. Let me show you. In the first plague, the first plague was the turning of the Nile River into blood. Now let's show that famous scene. Take a look at this. Here's our pretend Amenhotep II. That's him. There's Moses, Aaron again, and of course the Nile River going to spread out that way, turning into blood. Now you already know this. I just told you and taught you that the plagues are against the gods and goddesses of Egypt. That's what they're against. And it's a confrontation between Moses' God versus these other gods. Who's the real one or ones? Remember, the Nile River is a god. The Nile River is Hape. So therefore, it's Moses' God versus Hape. Can Moses' God make the Nile River turn to blood, or can Hape prevent it? It's a battle to see who the real one is. And of course, we know from the text, Moses wins out. His God wins out. That's the first plague. Even after the first plague, the Nile, and remember, if the Nile turns, you can't fish, you can't eat, it won't flood. This is famine. This is terrible. But yet Pharaoh, Amenhotep II, refuses. I'm not letting your people go. They're my property. They're my slaves. They're my workforce. They're my economy. They belong to me, and no shepherd and no rival to my father's throne will tell me what to do. First plague's over. Ravages Egypt. The second plague comes, and it too is against the gods and goddesses of Egypt. And he still won't bend his knee. He still refuses. Plague 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. He refuses 9 times after Egypt is almost destroyed in this confrontation between Moses' God and the gods and goddesses of Amenhotep II, Pharaoh of Egypt. He still won't bend the knee. He still will not let them go. And then the 10th plague. Let's just talk about that briefly. The 10th plague was the firstborn will die up to Pharaoh's son. Up to, not Pharaoh, but up to, because he's a firstborn son. So everybody, even the Israelites, firstborn will die, and it's a specific time. So what we're told in the literature is God told Moses, and Moses told the people to take lamb's blood. They took lamb's blood and put it on top of their doors of their homes, and the side, and this side. So the lamb's blood is there. And when God came through, if he saw the lamb's blood on the door, he would pass by. He would pass over that house. Do you see where Passover comes from? Right now, there are many Jewish people who practice and have Passover. It's the same time as the Christians' Easter time. But Passover, what are they celebrating? Christians celebrate it too. It's when God passed over their homes because the blood was on the door of their homes. If there was no lamb's blood on those doors, the firstborn in those homes died. Now, of course, the Egyptians aren't told that, but Moses tells the Israelites, and so they put the lamb's blood there so that God will pass over their home. And long story short, we're told that Amenhotep II, Pharaoh of Egypt, his son, died in the 10th plague. That breaks him. That breaks him. Now, why would that break him? He has many sons. He's the firstborn son, isn't he? That son would have ruled the world. He's dead. So this is a big blow, and this breaks Amenhotep II. Now let's pause here for a second. I like a lot of archaeology. I do archaeology. I like a lot of the testing and confirmation of things. So I always asked, do we know who that firstborn son was of Amenhotep II? And the answer is yes. His name is in your list. His name was Webensenu. Webensenu. Now, I also asked, is there any evidence anywhere of Webensenu dying in some catastrophic way that the 10th plague was? I mean, we don't even really understand it. It's just that death came and they died. Is there any evidence, literary, archaeological evidence, that this boy died in a horrific way? The answer is yes, there is. A few years ago, archaeologists found the tomb of Webensenu. We found his tomb. When the archaeologists were excavating, this tomb was magnificent. And they thought there's a pharaoh in there. There's got to be, because this is too good for. Remember Pharaoh Tut? Pharaoh Tut's nothing compared to what this tomb was. And we thought, this is a powerful pharaoh. They went in, and it's a boy. It's a son. It's not a pharaoh. I said, wait a minute, this makes no sense. Nobody would give a son this magnificent kind of a burial. But if a son like this died in some catastrophic, horrific, bad way, unusual way, out of the norm, the father, Amenhotep II, would build a magnificent tomb to house his body to get him to the afterlife. It would try to make up for the big loss, the bad way that he died. Now, it does not say on the tomb, it does not say Webensenu died in the 10th plague. It does not say that. They would not have done that. Nobody would have. But when you look at it, this boy did not die a normal death. It was some really bad way, because we can tell by the nature of the tomb. And by the way, he is the only boy to ever get such a tomb in all of human history. I mean, for a king, yes. For a pharaoh, yes. But not a boy. But you do if something really was out of the ordinary, and that 10th plague was out of the ordinary. So there is confirmation on that. So this breaks Amenhotep II, Pharaoh of Egypt, and he tells Moses, go, take them out. So Moses and then Joshua is like his second in command, and when Moses died, Joshua will become the leader. Under the leadership of Moses and Joshua, 2 million people leave Egypt. The economy of Egypt leaves the country. They go and they're heading toward the wilderness. Let me show you now another slide here from the movie, which I think is good. Here is, we're going to say this is Amenhotep II here, and of course here's Webensenu. This you cannot see. This would have been one of the gods of the dead. He would have done this. This is very good. He would have placed it on the arms of this God of the dead, and prayed, as he's doing, that to be more powerful than Moses' God. Moses' God took his life and now raised him back. It did not happen. And as he's praying, Moses and these Israelites, 2 million people, are leaving. But then nothing happens to his son, so Amenhotep II changes his mind and he goes after Moses. He's going to punish Moses. And of course, he's going to get his workforce back, his economy. So he only takes his chariots, not the entire army, and the captain of the host of the chariots will command it and will take it and get Moses. So they go after Moses and 2 million people, and you know the rest of the story. They trapped them by the Red Sea, and then we're told that Moses, God opened the Red Sea up on dry land. They all went through, and then the chariots of Pharaoh came through under the leadership of the captain of the host, and they go through, and then the waters come over and drown, or actually just destroy the chariots. Let me show you now. Here's where Pharaoh and his chariots go after Moses, and you can see all these different things here, the chariots coming after him, and then the destruction in the Red Sea. Here are the Jewish people, and down here are the chariots, and of course the Red Sea comes on. You and I have heard this many times, and that is what the text tells us. And then Moses and these 2 million Jewish people, they leave and they go off. I always had a question too. Any confirmation? I like confirmation. Any confirmation of anything of this. Now we have many sources, so it's already confirmed, but I like to see if there's anything more. The answer is, yes, we do. We have found archaeological confirmation of this. Back in the 1970s, an individual filmed what looked like chariot wheels down on the seafloor of the Red Sea. Chariot wheels. And people said, no, it can't be. It can't be. Others said, well, of course, your Old Testament says so. It must be. So there was the debate. Nobody confirmed it. Nobody went back down to see and bring stuff back until the year 2000, just a few years ago. In 2000, an individual went down and confirmed it. What he saw and reports, by the way, they found human bones. This floor is real nice. It looks like real sandy. But then there are these objects. And when you look at them and you can see them, they're wheels. They're wheels. It's amazing. And we are also told that they found horse bones and human bones, and even parts of the armor that the war horses that drew the chariots that they would have worn. So the wheels are real significant. So in 2000, it was confirmed. And what they saw down there, it says it's a devastation. It's an area of devastation, of destruction on that floor. And there's nothing else there. There's nothing else there. There are no formations. There's no litter, no trash, junk. There's nothing. It's real, looks like very sandy. But there are these objects. And you look at them, and they're wheels. You do with it as you wish. That was confirmed in 2000. Now, Moses is gone. Amenhotep, he's still running the show. His workforce is gone. He does something now that is just treacherous in the Egyptian thinking. When he goes back to Egypt, he destroys everything Hatshepsut. In other words, Hatshepsut statues, he cut her head off. He cut her head off, or if she's got a relief, on the side of a wall, he had someone chisel her face off. What's he doing? In Egyptian thinking, the statue, the face, the person, the relief represents the person. We don't know, at this time at least, what happened to Hatshepsut. She's dead. So what he did was he cut her head off so that she can't breathe in the afterlife. He had her face chiseled off all of her reliefs, all of the pictures on the walls and so forth, so she can't breathe in the afterlife. He hated her so much that he killed her in the afterlife, in the Egyptian thinking. Now, why would Amenhotep II, Pharaoh of Egypt, hate Hatshepsut, she's dead, she's gone, been dead for a long time? Why would he hate her so much? The answer is Moses. He can't punish Moses anymore. He just got his chariot smashed in the Red Sea. Moses is gone. But who can he punish? He can punish the woman who found that little box as it came down the Nile River. He can punish that woman who took that little baby out instead of drowning him and named him Moses. He can punish the woman who takes that little baby, raises him as a prince of Egypt. It was that woman, Hatshepsut, who puts him on, side by side with my great father, Thutmose III, as his rival. It's her fault that my father almost lost the throne to Moses. It's her fault that Moses comes back as a shepherd and almost destroys Egypt. It's her fault that my son, Webensenu, who would have ruled the world, is dead. It's her fault that my chariots were smashed into the Red Sea. Do you see how he's thinking? I can't punish Moses anymore. He's gone, but I can punish her. So her statues, he has her head cut off. There's some statues, the one I showed you, a couple, he didn't get those. So there are a few that he did not get. But he will do that. All you see is this real pretty face smiling. There's no body. That's Hatshepsut. And everything Hatshepsut's gone to kill her in the afterlife. That's hatred. One more thing about him. I like confirmation. I like confirmation of everything. In the Egyptian records of Amenhotep II, Pharaoh of Egypt, he's still the most powerful man on the planet. His army is still powerful. Chariots has been smashed up. Well, they could rebuild those. Put your Bible aside. Don't throw stones or get mad at me. Put your Bible aside. In the records of Amenhotep II, he tells us that 7 months after the Jewish people left, after the Exodus, there's confirmation right there. So when it happened, the Jewish people left, and then 7 months later, he says, I began my what are called the 3 Asiatic campaigns. It's in your notes, spelled correctly. He went to Asia, Israel, Asia, and recaptured slaves. He made 3 campaigns. He says 7 months, starting 7 months after the Exodus. That's not in your Bible. That is in Egyptian records. Confirmation of it. 7 months later, he goes and starts his 3 Asiatic campaigns, and he is bringing back hundreds of thousands of slaves back to Egypt. Now, my question is, why? Well, the answer is obvious, isn't it? He lost 2 million people. His workforce, his economy left. He's got to get it back. This is the only person in all of history that went on campaigns to capture hundreds of thousands like this and to bring them back for one purpose, to build his cities as a workforce. In the second Asiatic campaign, the first, the second, we have the number in the second. We're told that he brought back 101,128 new slaves on the second journey, on the second campaign. The first and the third, he brings back a few hundred thousand more. Confirmation once again. So what we have done in this particular lesson, we have been learning about the new kingdom and very powerful men and a woman, the most powerful woman who to ever live on this planet, and her name was Hatshepsut. So I hope you enjoyed learning this. We're going to start a brand new unit in our next lesson, and I'll see you then.